Hello, everyone. We are live, and today is Thursday, and today is June 2nd. And as you know, Thursday is when I do my weekly interviews. So if you are joining us live, down below, type in hashtag live. If it's the replay that you're watching, hashtag replay. And then make sure if you want to join the conversation that you click on StreamYard to give them permission, all right, to use your name. Otherwise, you will come across as Facebook user. And we certainly want to be in conversation with you and be able to use your name and show your comments and whatnot. Now, if you're the type of person that just likes to react, to listen, then send us those wonderful hearts, all right, or thumbs up, but we prefer the hearts. Okay, as you well know, I'm coming in from Mexico. Well, we'll find out where my guest is from. We'll ask her that question. I usually like to tell you what we have in common. We certainly have some of the same mentors in common, one being Mary Morrissey, Bob Proctor. And of course, I know we read a lot of the same spiritual books because they were gifted to us by Mary Morrissey. And so I have known my guest for 6 or more years. And we'll talk about where we met. Now, who is Dr. Birgitte Tan, who is my guest today? In terms of her accomplishment, Dr. Tan is a certified grief transformation specialist, which is her passion. She's a transformational life coach, a best-selling international author. Whatever country you're in, you can get her book. She's a global speaker, and she's a dancer. So, without any further ado, let's meet my awesome guest, Dr. Birgitte Tan. How are you, doctor? How are you?
I am doing very well, and thank you so much, Lucy. I just love that introductions. What an honor! And how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. And the honor is all mine. I want to know something. Where are you right now? Are you in the US?
Yes, I am in California, sunny California.
Sunny California. Is that your home?
Yes, it is my home. It's an hour north of Los Angeles.
Okay. Now, were you born there, or is that a place where you work?
I wasn't. I was born and grew up in Indonesia. If anybody into snorkeling or scuba diving, you've heard about Indonesia. Bali is part of Indonesia. And after college, I came to the United States and to go to school and through Washington State, through Wisconsin, I end up in California.
Ah, you ended up in California. That's where I ended up also before retiring to Mexico. California is a wonderful state. I was in Northern California. You're in Southern California, so we know it well. But you and I met in Southern California, at a Dream Builder event, live event, I might say. I think it was 2016. Now, let me tell you, may I call you Birgitte?
Yeah.
All right. I came to Mary Morrissey and with much heartache. I was looking for some kind of transformation. I wanted some personal development. So I took all of her courses individually, and that started in 2016. Now, I see you as a dancer. I met you dancing. You were in the front of the crowd. You were up there dancing. And I remember thinking, I'm going to join that woman. I want to dance too. So you were up there before the events and between segments.
Yeah.
You love to dance, don't you?
Oh, I love to dance. Indeed, that is actually one of my very unique tools for helping people move through and beyond their grief, which is away sadness. There is a part of grief that words cannot touch. I discovered this through my own experience as well, through my clients' experience. And the one that you saw and we dance, it's always like super hyper energetic, right? It's not always like that. With the dance away sadness, you dance to your heart tune. So sometimes for some people, they're like, I'm not into jumping around. I'm into tapping my fingers and my toes. That's still very much working, but because the music even the tiniest movement in the coaching, it's just wonderful.
Wonderful. So this component called Dance Away Sadness is it's part of your program, right?
It is part of the grief transformations that I help people, different programs that I help people with. Not only dancing, apparently I also have as a grief coach. The one other things that a lot of people think of when you say grief is like grief counseling, where you sit on a couch for a long time. I mean, we all want to be able to move forward, not just kind of get over it, but forward with our life. So Dance Away Sadness is one, but the other part is the grief coaching, where it is either 9 weeks or 12 weeks. And through that, we help you move forward.
Okay, and we will talk about your programs. But before we get into your programs, I want to talk a little bit about your background. Now, you are a vet oncologist.
Yes.
You don't meet too many vet oncologists. And so I can imagine that you saw and you felt impact of grief in your clients, who lost their pets. So could you talk a little bit about what brought you to want to be a vet to begin with? Can you talk a little bit about that?
What brought me to want to be a veterinarian? Because I love animal and I love to be able to help people.
Mm-hmm.
I am one of those. If you ask my mother, she probably still semi-traumatized from all the kittens that I pick up. Mm-hmm. And at some point, I you name it, I even have like pet mice and worms. One time I come home with worms and my mother
worms
she was like, oh God. So between the combinations of wanting to be able to help people and loving animals, veterinarian seems to be the most makes sense thing.
Right. So then you became, so tell me, you went to college, you became a vet oncologist. And then you became, we're going to take this in components because your passion is being a grief specialist, as I understand it. So could you talk about being a grief specialist, especially in terms of, I know that you have an affiliation with the Grief Recovery Institute. Can you talk about those two things, please, with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Grief Recovery Institute is where I train.
Okay.
Initially, so I'm actually double. Well, my educations would be a veterinarian, which is a doctorate degree, and my postdoctorate is in oncology. That's a postdoctorate, and then with the grief, it started out with my own life experience, and when I see how much it can help, I decided to become certified, both actually in grief with the Grief Recovery Institute, but also in life transformations, where with the Brave Thinking Institute, and so that's I'm both certified with the Grief Recovery to help understand. They have really great tools, as well as the transformation part, where you are actually able to, take a grief happen in us, but it is up to us on what we want to do with that. And the grief transformation is to take grief and then transform the energy of grief into something that will honor and celebrate your loved one and you even more, to bring a legacy out of that, if that's what calls you.
Right. People throw around the word grief a lot. Let's talk about that for a little bit. How would you define grief? I mean, there's obvious griefs. When somebody dies, we're grieving. When we go through a divorce, I've been through a divorce, you've been through a divorce, there's grieving. It doesn't matter who leaves whom, when you lose a pet. But there's other types of griefs that are not so known. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought it up. There are actually more than 40 different causes of grief.
Wow.
And really, that's because the definition, so grief is not only the big four, which you just mentioned, but the definition of grief is the unsettling feelings caused by a change. Have anybody experienced change, particularly in the last 2 years? Or hope unmet? So let's say you have a hope that, by now the pandemic is over, depending on where you live, and you're like, I was still wearing mask and no mask. And so grief is the unsettling feeling caused by a change or hope unmet. You have not experienced change lately.
Right. Especially during the pandemic, we all have. So we all fit that bill. We all fit that bill. There's also, I'm going to talk a little bit about unresolved grief a little bit, because it touched me and my family so much. My father was in the Royal Air Force during the World War II, and he was a bombardier, and he never spoke about the war. And I know that he lost his whole platoon. And so as I see it, that was like unresolved grief. I mean, that is a problem, isn't it?
Yeah, unresolved grief can be very a challenging thing. And any, some people say, well, I don't know if I have unresolved grief. This is how you know if you have unresolved grief. If a memory of something comes up and it shut you down.
It's too painful. Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, that's just so painful. I don't want to talk about that. Or something happened in life and it triggers you. If anybody have triggers usually come from unresolved grief. You see something, you're walking along with your sister or your significant other, something happened and they're like, and you go, ah! That's typically because of there is an unresolved grief. And so, and unresolved grief, it's one of those things that, unlike, sometimes we feel that there is a false belief in the society that time heals all and time will heal grief. Let me ask you this. If time heals all grief, why is there PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder?
Right, exactly.
So the time don't heal all. The time actually don't heal grief. And over time, instead of us feeling sadness, and the majority of grief, actually, you don't feel sadness. Even when you mention your loss of a loved one, there is a component of anger. If your grief, for instance, come from a change from retirement, you might not feel sadness at all. I mean, dang, you got to be supposed to be happy like you're retiring.
I was, but a lot of people aren't.
Right. But then at the same time, you're kind of like feeling lost. You're like, this was my life. This was my identity. Where am I now? So you're simply feeling the unsettling. In my book, Seeking Peace, it's just share about a story about this couple who have been married for so long and they were on the verge of divorce because of unrecognized retirement grief. So unresolved grief actually will morph into something else in the body. You and I heard many times, Lucie, that everything has energy. So the energy of grief will turn into a lot of time, over time, physical illness.
I want to go back to when you made a statement about time heals all wounds. I remember my mother used to say that to me when I was sad or maybe I was grieving. I don't know. And she would say, time heals all wounds. Is that a myth? Is that a myth?
It's a major myth. It's one of the most harmful myth. There are 9 myths, and you will actually, as a gift to our listener today, when you go to my website, you will be able, joyfulrichesbeyondgrief.com. You will be able to see a sign where it says "Get your gift" that I have prepared specifically, and one of them is actually all the myth that we will not be talking. We will not be talking about them all, but one of them is that myth of that time heals all. It's one of the major myths that leaves so many people in pain, which is kind of, oh, maybe I'll just give another year, or maybe I'll just wait 5 years. Do you want to not be living your life to the fullest for 5 years?
Yeah.
Or a year?
Why wait 5 years? I mean, really, life is so short. That's so true. I want to, I think that there's a great impact of unresolved grief, and I think that, and I think you've pointed it out many times to me and things that I've read, that grief is really often misdiagnosed, right? So many people sometimes are put on various meds. I noticed that you mentioned something about it that there's a $114 billion industry, all right, about grief, about grief causes. So could you tell me, can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, $114 billion industry.
Yeah, so that is just at the workplace, by the way. It's not
Okay.
counting personal life. And
Right.
this was in 2017 in the US alone. So the Grief Recovery Institute did a study, and in 2017, they discovered that grief cost the workplace 113.7 billion.
Wow.
In 1 year, US alone. Now this was 2017, and by the way, this number was an increase by 75% from 2005, and so it was a dramatic increase. Imagine now, we don't have the number for now, but after with the pandemic, we expect that number to be at least double.
Oh wow! Oh, my God! Thank you for clarifying that's what it costs the workplace.
Yeah.
That amount of money, and probably double, as you say, because of the pandemic.
Right. Right.
So
personal, not including personal life, then people going because of grieving, they go through divorce and things like that.
Now, you did learn a grief recovery method at the Grief Institute, right? What is that grief recovery method that you talk about?
So the grief recovery method is a system, a very well structured system that has been developed and been around, and the only one that is evidence based. There are a lot of different grief system out there.
Right.
Grief recovery is the only one that's evidence based. In other words, it's been studied in the university to show that it helps greatly. Right. And the grief recovery method is a structured system. It's an actions based system, so that's why I call it grief coaching. People call it grief specialist, but it's basically there are the way of approach where you just keep talking about it until you hopefully feel better. Well, in some scenario, I think talk to exhaustion is what I call it, and then after you're done talking, you're like, but there's still something left behind. And so the grief recovery method has a very powerful tools in a matter of 8 to 12 weeks, where we teach you a very step-by-step system. We guide you. We teach you step-by-step system. You take the actions. I got you, and you actually help complete your unresolved grief.
Okay, so this is part of your coaching then. You came to Mary Morrissey. Certainly when I got there in 2016, I came for personal development because I was, I was suffering from a divorce. And I know it takes two to tango, but the loss was so great, and I was. It happened the month before we were supposed to go celebrate our 10th year anniversary in Paris. And my 70th birthday. And anyway, it was traumatic and devastating at the same time. So I thought, how am I going to get through this? How am I going to survive? How am I going to survive this? So I got online and I found Sonia Rickety. So I took her audios with me to Europe. And that's how I met Mary Morrissey. Now, how did you come to meet Mary Morrissey? Because she plays a very important role in both our lives. I always am very kind of curious about what brings people to her.
Yeah, very similar. Both Mary Morrissey as well as other coaches, and actually the Grief Recovery Institute. I encountered them both from a very similar journey. Actually, I went through life, so to say. Yeah. It started with a divorce, but then it opened a Pandora box of 9 other grievous events, all happened in 2 years, in 2010-11. And at the end of that, I said, well, I can die. Or, even if you not physically die, some of us don't physically die, but we kind of like live such a life that we kind of like basically die emotionally and livelihood, right? So I could die, or I could just survive, or I could thrive. And something in me just said, I mean, partly, to be honest, it was partly fired by, I'm gonna, show that I can thrive, kind of like to get back to all these people, right? So because they say the best revenge is when you succeed. So I'm like, I'm gonna try. Just watch me.
I can see you do that. I can see it. Yeah.
Right. And so that's when I allow myself the support from Grief Recovery Institute as well as the support from Mary Morrissey.
Okay, so that's what brought you to Mary Morrissey, and then of course you took her coaching program, which is from the Life Mastery Institute. It really is a premier training center. I never wanted to be a coach. I took it all for personal development, but my business coach is from, graduated with Mary also. So what made you want to become a coach though? I didn't want to become a coach. What makes one want to become? I mean, I totally get that you want to help people, but there's so many coaches today. What makes one want to become a coach?
Well, a couple things that want me to become a coach, and one is actually, so when I was helped, I see the result was so amazing. And being a doctor, I have seen many times where, now that I have better awareness, I have seen many times where being able to think differently would have make a difference in the result.
Okay.
And oncologist, looking back, there was something, I think, the term of unconscious awareness. Looking back, I actually has already been helping my client with some of the things that they teach through grief coaching as well as transformation coaching. And I look back and realize that all those clients that actually apply this, they have better results in cancer. I mean, in something like cancer, you might be coming in that, for some, that's basically a terminal diagnosis. And the one that apply this has what we call miraculous result and better quality of life all along. So I said, oh my goodness, imagine if I'm actually fully trained in this instead of just a little bit here and there. So that's actually when I see my own result, within 2 years, I went from broke heart, broken, sick all the time, miserable all the time, to living a life better than I could imagine. I learned that to help people around me, my client, and kind of like just people in my circle. And then beyond that, I see how much grief impacting us. And as you mentioned earlier, I mean, that's in workplace. What about in personal life? We hear about doctors burning out with the pandemic, right? I mean, all the healthcare. Well, one of the reasons you burned out is because of unrecognized grief. Grief makes us overwhelmed. Grief clouds our ability to see things clearly. And when you're overwhelmed and you're not able to see things clearly and think clearly, guess what? Even the slightest things will make you say, oh my God, I'm done with this. I'm just going to throw it out of the window. And so that's really actually what calls me now to really step into the grief coaching.
Well, that's interesting. You mentioned before, I think you mentioned 9 myths of grief or something.
Yeah.
Was it 9? I thought it was 7, 9. Can you talk a little bit about? I know that time will heal is definitely a myth. Can you talk a little bit about the 7? I think that's really important to talk about because I don't think I was aware that was a myth.
Yeah. So one of the other one that we talk about actually is that many people believe grief is only from death, divorce, dire diagnosis, which are called the Big Four. Well, there are more than 40 different things, including getting married, moving, retirement, and so forth and so on. So happy things in life. And actually this book here, Seeking Peace, have a lot of them as well. But the other really common one is actually that people think that it's good to get busy. You know how many times people like say, oh, something happened. don't if you start feeling bad and your friend said, come on, let's go out, you'll feel better. And when I went through divorce, they're like, oh my god, oh look at you, I mean, let's match you up, let's match you up.
I know they want to match you up immediately.
Okay, hello, you're like, and then you kind of like, okay, because we don't know any better, we go, I'm just like, yeah, we're got to stay busy, and then you got home and you got so exhausted. And yes, when you are busy, you feel better. It's simply because you're distracted, because we're by all these things. But then when you get home, did the pain go away?
No.
It's many times it's worse. So that's actually a very common thing, that is very dangerous as well, among the myth of the grief.
Okay. Oh my God. So in your book, Seeking Peace, there's more information about those 7 myths, right?
Yes. And also in my book, Seeking Peace, and also on the gift that I have prepared for you, I also have these different myths, and that it's in there.
And we will make sure that you and my audience get a copy of that. And I'll be putting in the comments after this particular interview, the website for Dr. Birgitte Tan. So what system have you created to help your clients go from grief to joy? It's not just survive. I mean, all I wanted to do when I remember how grieving I was, all I wanted to do was survive. How can I survive this? Well, I did find a way, but you actually take them from grief to joy. Tell me, let's talk about your system a little bit.
Absolutely. So the system that I created is actually something very simple to remember. It's called the 5 fingers method. And having been through things myself, we know that we don't need huge thick dictionary to read and complicated system, like we mentioned that when people grieving were already overwhelmed, and complicated things is not one. So it's literally uses your 5 fingers to help you remember the tools, right? And so it's called the 5 fingers method. And actually, on the gift that I mentioned, it's shared in detail as well. So you'll be able to, and that one, it's a system that, so I created the 5 fingers method initially to help people move through grief. And that's what this book, Seeking Peace, is all about. Because that's what it's called, the proven 5 fingers method to thrive through change or grief effortlessly. But also then after that, I was like, well, I mean, even when you're not grieving, just to navigate your day-to-day life. So the one that's on the gift is even more, it's practical for everybody. Even if you're not grieving, it's the 5 fingers method daily practice.
Okay, daily practice. Okay, great.
So you practice every day, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that will help you create a more joyful way. Less grief, more joy.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a wonderful, so I'm going to look into it for sure. I want to talk about, you're also a global speaker, and I know that you just came back from a summit in Portugal. And you were with business leaders from, I think, India, Portugal, and Brazil, or something. I think you mentioned. Do people actually call you up and want you to speak at their summit? Did you get that a lot?
I do. I've been very great. I'm very grateful and thrilled and honored that I do. People have invited me to speak in multiple different venues.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's wonderful. So we should let the audience know that you are open for speaking on their venues also. Okay. Well, I want to end up with what I started. You are a dancer. And so I know that, and I love dancing. And so that's why I joined you up there in front in Mary's Dream Builder Live, So let's talk about your component dance, Away Sadness. It's actually part of your life, your daily life, I think. And how can people, should they just go to dance? Talk a little bit about that. Dance away sadness.
Yes, dance away sadness is
I like it.
then dance away sadness is a system that I created. It's basically a combinations of music and dancing as your heart calls. So it's freestyle dancing.
Okay.
Some people jump around, and some people. I've done this in many cancer centers as well as other venue. So some people said I'm not a dancer, or I'm too tired to jump around. That's perfectly fine. I have people who with cancer centers, and they just lie down, and all they do is they tap their finger and nod their head or something, and it still work very well because there is a part of grief that words cannot touch. From time to time, I do a community fan of that. I'm actually, and as your gift to your to the audience, I actually have 2 gift events in addition to the resource that's on my website, which I can mention if you want to. But I do sometimes an event, a special event like that, as well as you can reach out to me, and it's everything is tailored to the person need. So some people come and said, I want dance away sadness coaching, and when I talk to them, I said, you only need 3 times at the most, and some people want to do it for a longer time. So everybody's
it could be once, it could be 3 times. So good. So we have in the tickler there that you can contact Dr. Birgitte Tan by email, Birgitte@BirgitteTan.com, or by phone, 1-800-865-864-2002. Her book is on Amazon. It is called Seeking Peace. And we will make sure that in the comments after this interview, we will put your website, and to make sure that people can go there and get their special gift.
Yes.
So,
and also to just as I mentioned, I actually provided, there is a Dance Away Sadness event this Saturday.
Okay.
This Saturday. So I'll share the link for you, the informations. But basically, you'll just contact me in one of those 2. And actually, in honor of Mother here in the U.S., Mother's Day, Memorial Day, and Father's Day, and you as well, that I actually anyone who contact with me just says that that you hear this interview with Lucie, I will provide you a gift rate. So in other words, if you want to work with me, then it will be a very specialized rate that is significantly reduced as an honor to this opportunity, to an honor to our friendship, Lucie.
You're so sweet. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Napoleon Hill said, every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Dr. Tan, I see you as the embodiment of that seed of the greater benefit. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Very informative, very educational, very heartwarming. And, there is hope. You don't have to grieve alone. There's lots of hope out there. And Dr. Birgitte is out there ready to help you. Do you have any final words?
I would just say there is hope, but sometimes it's tough to be doing it alone. So yes, there is hope, but allow support. Nobody can climb a Mount Everest, and sometimes when we are in having things happening, it feels like there's a Mount Everest. Nobody can climb a Mount Everest, a mountain on our own, and so allow support. You deserve it. Your loved one deserve it. You deserve to, and your loved one deserve you to be happy.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I want to thank my audience for being here. As you know, I have these weekly interviews, and it's really to show you how people can take their knowledge, their expertise, and make a big impact in the world. All right. I'm all about that. I'm all about collaborating and bringing in inspiring stories. And also, you should know that I work with a team of people that if you have a course, if you have a project that you need to help launch, we can help you. All right. So contact us. So thank you, Birgitte, and thank you, my audience. And we will see you next week. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.